Be it the casino, the sex of children, or a board game, wherever chance rules supreme, we are easily led astray. Today we will find out what the so-called gambler's fallacy is all about. Welcome to the Soft Skill channel. My name is Sebastian Jung, and today we will once again discuss biases and fallacies. Daniel Kahneman writes in Thinking Fast and Slow that our brain is not a good intuitive statistician, that we don't have a good intuition for statistics. And that is certainly true in regard to the gambler's fallacy. One of the earliest examples is from 1796 from the French scholar Pierre-Simon Laplace. He observed men whose wives were about to give birth, and those men were quite anxious and nervous if a lot of boys were born in their surroundings. Their thoughts were about like this: I want a son. There are boys and girls born at about the same number, about as many boys as girls. So, if plenty of boys are born in my surroundings, then the other families will use up all the boys and I'm left with the girls. Now, this thought is certainly not very nice towards the girls, and it makes no sense whatsoever, because the sex of a baby is not influenced by other babies born in the surroundings. It's totally independent of that. If we consciously think about it, this is quite obvious to us, but intuitively we tend to fall for the gambler's fallacy. You've probably played a board game before with friends or with family, and you probably encountered a situation like this. You were about to roll the die, and you wished for a 6. A 6 would have been great. And you said to yourself, oh, my chances are very good, because there wasn't a 6 rolled in quite some time. It's overdue to come. And of course, this doesn't make any sense either, because the die has no memory. The probability of rolling a 6 is 1 out of 6 either way, no matter if no 6 was rolled for a long time or if there was a string of 6s right before. And this is the gambler's fallacy. We encounter it wherever we deal with events that are determined by chance, without manipulation or anything, and that are totally independent of each other. And if we fall for the gambler's fallacy, we intuitively think there should be some connection, and past events should have some influence on future events and would allow us to predict them to some degree. And of course, this is quite a risky belief. The gambler's fallacy, as the name implies, is highly associated with gambling. And the most famous example of this fallacy is also from gambling. It occurred in 1913 in Monaco in the Casino de Monte Carlo, at the roulette table to be precise. Gamblers were quite astonished because the ball had landed on black 10 times in a row. And they expected red to be up next, and they betted all their money on red. It didn't end well. The string continued. At the end, the ball had landed on black 26 times in a row. When red finally came, all the gamblers had already gone broke. In reference to this event, the gambler's fallacy is sometimes also named the Monte Carlo fallacy. When we fall for the gambler's fallacy, we believe that there is some cosmic equilibrium that needs to be restored, that the die that didn't roll a 6 for a while is bound to roll one soon, that the coin that came up heads a few times in a row is bound to deliver tails next. But this, of course, is not true. Kahneman and Tversky have a great example for this sense of equilibrium that needs to be restored. Imagine there is a class of school children and you are performing an intelligence test. You know that the average IQ is 100. You test the first child and you are astonished to find out that it has an extraordinary IQ of 150. At this point, what do you expect the average IQ of this class of children to be? A lot of people say 100. But for this, the other children would have to have an intelligence below average to make up for that super intelligent kid first. Or there would need to be some very, very stupid kid, simply said, to counterbalance that intelligent first kid. And of course, it makes no sense to expect that. If we know nothing about those other children, the most reasonable assumption is that their intelligence will be average, so about 100, and if we combine that with the gifted kid we tested first, we end up with the class average that is above average, that is above 100. Kahneman and Tversky believe that the gambler's fallacy is a variation of the law of small numbers. We will discuss this in more detail at some point in the future. For now, let me just say the law of small numbers is the misconception that small sample should still be representative of the whole. So, for example, if I flip a coin, I have a standard coin, heads or tails, 50-50 chance. I know that in the long run, it will even out and I will get about as much heads as tails if I flip the coin very, very often. However, if I flip the coin just a few times, I still expect to get about half heads, half tails, and preferably alternating. And this is, of course, not very reasonable. As I said before, the gambler's fallacy only applies to specific situations, most importantly, where events are entirely independent of each other. Let's say I have a deck of cards, and I draw a card from this deck, and it is an ace. If I draw another card from this deck, the probability of getting another ace has decreased, because there are only 3 aces left in the deck. So those events are not independent of each other and they influence each other. So here the gambler's fallacy doesn't apply. Soon we will talk about the regression to the mean, which is a phenomenon, fallacy that deals with events that are connected, and we are still doing very badly there, I'm afraid. If we deal with situations where the gambler's fallacy does apply, it might be a good idea to check our basic assumptions. There is a great example for that in Nassim Taleb's The Black Swan, dealing with 2 people, Fat Tony and Dr. John. Dr. John is highly educated, Fat Tony has street smarts. And Taleb says to those 2, listen up, I have a coin here. A fair coin, normal coin, heads or tails, 50% chance each. I flipped this coin 99 times and it came up heads each single time. What is the probability that it will come up tails next? Dr. John says, well, as you just said, 50% chance, so the probability is 50%, then 99 previous trials don't matter. So the educated Dr. John didn't fall for the gambler's fallacy, he gave a mathematically correct answer. Fat Tony, however, says the probability is extremely low, probably below 1%. And Taleb asks him, but why? As Dr. John just said, the probability is supposed to be 50%. And Fat Tony explains, if you flipped this coin 99 times and it came up heads each time, there's not a chance this is really a fair coin. It will continue to come up heads. And this is a reasonable assumption in this situation. This is a reasonable train of thought. If you experience an unusual outcome, you might need to question your basic assumptions. In this case, you can calculate mathematically the probability of the coin really being fair, but that's not our topic here. And this questioning of the basic assumptions is something that might be a good idea if we encounter the gambler's fallacy in day-to-day life. Often we do this in ways like, oh, I had so many disappointments in my life recently, there's bound to be a success next to balance it out. Rolf Dobelli has a nice example for that, where we are looking for a job and we are sending out job applications, and we've already sent out plenty, but they all were rejected. We were never invited to an interview. Now, if we fall for the gambler's fallacy, we might say, oh well, I've got so many rejections, I just need to keep going. Invitations are bound to come soon to balance out all those previous rejections. Now, and this doesn't obviously make any sense. Instead, we should question our basic assumptions. Maybe our qualifications are not as valuable as we thought. Maybe the documents, the applications we prepared are not as good as we hoped. Maybe the salary we're asking for is too high. We should try to figure out what the problem is that causes those failures and try to improve our applications to have our future attempts be more successful. By the way, in The Black Swan, Taleb also warns us against what he calls the ludic fallacy. This is the idea that chance is something that can be tamed and controlled, that can be reduced to casino examples and thought experiments, while actually chance is something that is quite powerful, that has huge impact on our lives, on the world, on the history of humanity, and that we should not underestimate. By the way, on average, every 20th viewer is clicking the like button, and the previous 19 ones didn't do it, so you know what that means. While you're at it, you might also want to subscribe to the channel. I would be quite happy about that. We will see each other again next week with another exciting topic. For today, I'll take my leave. Have a nice day. See you next time.